Welcome to episode number 8 of Tapped In with Tony. Tonight's guest is a good friend of mine, Mitchell Balla from Balla Broadcasting. Mitchell does play-by-play for Jackson's boys and girls basketball teams and the varsity baseball team and for the Burning River Buckets. Mitchell, thank you for coming on tonight.
Tony, thank you very much for having me. This is a pleasure.
Not a problem, man. I understand that you are also an alumni of Jackson. I can see the hoodie.
That is correct. That is correct. I graduated there in 2016. Played baseball there, so that's kind of how I got my in coming back and broadcasting baseball, and then it's kind of taken off from there.
And speaking of that Jackson team, I believe you were part of the state championship team that year.
I missed it by a year on both ends. So in 2014,
Oh,
when they won states, I was on JV, and then my senior year, actually, we were the number one team in the state all season long, 29-0, and we got upset in the Sweet 16. And then the next year, 2017, they won states. So I missed it by a year on both ends.
wow. I know Jackson's got one of the best baseball programs in the state of Ohio. I've
Mm.
covered them when they played at League Park one year.
Yes, Coach Gamble has done a phenomenal job since he's taken over. I believe 2012, maybe 2011. I might be biased, but one of the best coaches in the state of Ohio and the best coach I've ever been able to play for.
Gotcha. And what positions did you play at Jackson?
Just first base and DH. That was my position once I hit once I entered high school. I might be a big guy, but I never threw hard. So pitching was never in the books for me.
Gotcha. Were you one of those guys who was a power hitter? I know Dylan Dingler also came out of Jackson, and probably a few other names that I forgot to mention.
There's been a lot of players that have come out of Jackson that have gone on to play college baseball at any level. Dylan Dingler, obviously, a big one, who is now in the Detroit Tigers organization, heading out to spring training. Kyle Nicholas, who's in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. Power hitter, I would say, is a bigger guy. Yeah, they were counting on me to drive the ball in the gap a little more often than just hit singles. I can definitely tell you, I was never a guy that was bunting for a base hit, and I never got the steal sign.
Wow. And how was it like? How was it like playing for that program throughout your high school career? And what was the recruiting process like when it came time for your college choice?
Playing for Jackson, it was obviously, I'm like I said, biased, but one of the best things ever. You play for a program, especially when I came up, that won a Division I state championship and graduated 14 plus seniors. When I came in as a junior, the target was on our back, the pressure was there, but I I love pressure no matter what it is. Um, Now, obviously, to say that you're going to be able to deliver every time, that's not usually the case. But play the way Coach Gamble would get us prepared, not only got us set up for success in terms of playing baseball, but also life, and that's what you want. He has been incredible still to this day after graduating from Jackson. But playing there, I mean, we're a huge Division I school, so big that there's actually two varsity teams. So other kids that don't get to play every day get opportunities at a high level. And so just competing with all your friends growing up, whether they were a year older, a year younger, or in your grade, was monumental in development for me as a player and a person. And then also when it came time for college, Coach Gamble was always willing, if you did the right things, willing to reach out to coaches for you to be able to put you in the right spot, and also would have meetings with you to determine, this is what you think's your best spot right now. What are the pros and cons of every school that was recruiting you? And also, what do you want to do? Because every baseball ends for everybody. Everybody's athletic career ends eventually, maybe except LeBron at this rate. But everybody has to hang them up at some point, and so you need to be able to move on after baseball. And because of those types of talks with Coach Gamble, it's where I am now. I went on to play at Notre Dame College, a small little D2 up in the South Euclid, Cleveland area. I was on the team for 3 years, played only two. I had 2 foot surgeries after the third year, missing over a year and a half of baseball. I was never the same player, so I decided to hang up the cleats.
Gotcha, gotcha. And where did NDC Notre Dame College play their home games? Because I know they don't have an on-campus stadium. They have one for football that I've driven past on my way to
Mhm.
Euclid for playoff games. Where they got play their baseball games at?
So actually, our home games are played in Avon. We actually play where the Lake Erie Crushers play, which was Springer Stadium, and now I believe it has a different name, something Healthcare Field maybe.
Mercy
But yeah,
Health.
we were driving 45 minutes to an hour for all of our home games every weekend.
Wow, gotcha. And I know that there are a lot of fields. Well, there's Case's Field, which is in my mind one of the best in the area, but that's
Mhm.
when Case plays, and John Carroll's right down the street, but they got their stuff, so guys pretty
Right.
much had to make do with what you had, I guess.
Absolutely. And the other thing is like some people say, why wouldn't you play at John Carroll? Well, baseball seasons go on at the same time, no matter what division. Obviously, JCU is Division 3. It's hard to try to split a field with somebody. At the same time, though, the drive obviously is a downside to everything. But playing at a field like we did in Avon, uh, by far the best field in the Mountain East Conference, and to say you got to play on a minor league field is pretty awesome.
Gotcha. Did you guys ever get to play against any local schools during your college baseball career?
We actually we played Walsh my freshman year, but down in Florida. As crazy as
Oh,
that sounds. Then the next year we played them at Walsh, which is cool. But to think that you played a team an hour away from you down in Florida, another team like Ohio Dominican down in Columbus, we played them in Florida too. To my knowledge, I don't think we ever played Malone. And a lot of those schools in the GMAC or when it was the GLIAC, we didn't really run into them too often.
gotcha. And I know with Jackson, I know the Federal League definitely they go back and forth quite a bit. Like it's like Hatfield and McCoy sometimes.
Yeah. Listen, and this goes for all sports. Obviously, I only played baseball, but um, going to Jackson, a lot of us were always close growing up. So you'd go support every team in whatever sport it was. The Federal League is one of the best conferences and leagues in high school sports. Just last year, for example, taking baseball out of it, you look at the girls' basketball. Once that COVID came and pretty much altered how the playoffs are, and now we're in these super districts, you had 4 Federal League teams on the same night playing for a district championship. And then ultimately had 2 Federal League teams advancing to the Sweet 16 and playing each other in the regional semifinals. You've seen it with boys basketball now, girls basketball. Obviously, football's a little different, but even baseball. Last year, Jackson wins the Federal League, elects to go to a different district, and Hoover stays in Canton, and Hoover makes it all the way to the district championship game. The Federal League gets you prepared for the playoffs whenever it is in whatever sport, and it's by far one of the best and most competitive leagues in the state of Ohio. I firmly believe that.
And who would you say is the top rival in the Federal League? Because I know some people will say Lake, some will say Hoover, some will even
Well,
say Ken McKinley.
for Jackson, it's Hoover. That's our rival. You know, they are our rivals. Usually get the best out of each other, and that's what's fun, right? You want to be able to bring the best out of each other, and obviously, um, looking at the record we had when I was there, you usually got the best punch from everybody, especially as a public school winning a state championship. But man, we played some instant classic games against Hoover in terms of baseball. Basketball's done the same over the years. Football, I mean, this past season, it came down to the final play. I was actually covering that game. It came down to the final play. Jackson had a shot to throw to the end zone from the 25, like Hoover's 25. So it wasn't like it was a long shot Hail Mary, but these games are always close. It's hardly that you see a blowout. And if it's a season like basketball where you play each other twice, if you blow them out the first time, that second time, it's going to be close. It's going to be a nail biter. And if they beat you, it happens because it's a rivalry game.
Gotcha. And when you hung up your baseball cleats, what got you into broadcasting?
So I was very fortunate. And, I look back, a lot of people are asked the question at an early age, what do you want to do when you get older? I'm sure you remember getting asked that. And maybe you were like me and you knew what you wanted to do. 6th grade, I knew I wanted to get into sports broadcasting. I was enamored with Ahmad Crump of the Cavaliers doing the player introductions. I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then growing up here, being able to listen to the late great Joe Tate, Jim Donovan, Tom Hamilton, I fell in love with what they did. So I knew from a young age what I wanted to do. And then fast forward to my junior year of college when it came time for an internship. I latched on with ESPN Cleveland, interned with them there. And a big reason why I was able to hang up the cleats with a little bit of ease, I was offered a part-time job, heading into my senior year of college with ESPN 850. And it was a no-brainer for me because I knew I wasn't the same baseball player. And I also knew that this was a door opening and it was something I wanted to, pursue. And ultimately I had a phenomenal time with ESPN 850. It was just the opportunities, the relationships, networking was amazing. But that was the fall of 2019, had some things lined up heading into 2020. And then we all know what happened in 2020, as the world shut down for a little bit. So that opportunity ended up going away.
Wow. So how big it was that even though the opportunity ended up going away, how big was that like going on throughout and how did COVID affect you even besides with that? How did COVID affect you moving forward with that?
So as far as the opportunity, I mean, I think a lot of people out there that just flip on the radio or maybe flip on YouTube or whatever podcast platform they listen to thinks that's all that, these big stations do, right? They just do this. But I mean, you get to see the marketing, you get to see every little detail that goes into producing a show, to hosting a show, to running the board. It was pretty overwhelming because I didn't come from a background that knew anything about this. There's now some high schools that are starting to implement broadcast journalism classes, which is awesome. Um, so it was new to me, but I grew up so fast because they put you in situations to learn. If you're going to fail, it's going to be with somebody one on one. You're not going to be in a position to fail and be embarrassed in front of a crowd or an audience of hundreds of thousands of people potentially. So that's where, that opportunity and how you grow from it happened. As far as COVID, I was like most people. I actually was at the time Quicken Loans Arena, now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, getting ready to go live for Akron and OU MAC tournament games. I was going to be broadcasting those games live on the radio. I mean, it felt like a dream come true, if I'm being honest, just to be able to do something like that. And like everybody knows, you're sitting there and all of a sudden the ACC cancels their conference tournament and the Big Ten cancels their conference tournament. And here I am sitting on the floor watching these teams warm up and the floor gets cleared and the clock that was 33 minutes till tip gets reset an hour, 37 minutes, and you get called to the media room. And I knew right then and there that, you know, I, I didn't know it at the time that my dream of being able to make that debut was going to be over, but it hurt obviously. But then you look at how COVID affected you, not just me, but I'm sure you, everybody else in the broadcast and sports media field, and everybody else in the world. We were dealing with something we didn't know about. And, you know, when sports went away, I mean, you look at the high school spring season sports that automatically got canceled in 2020. There was really no opportunities to do much other than maybe podcasting and trying to think of things to talk about. I mean, it's not like we could break down what game took place last night because the NBA went on pause. The MLB was on pause. We were in the off season for the NFL. It altered everybody, even outside of the field that you and I are in right now, to you just kind of have to wait and see. But I still think that through that, you learned a lot about yourself. I think I learned a lot about myself. And the big thing I took away is don't take anything for granted. You know, every opportunity you get to call a game, my whole thing is you never know who's listening. I always try to take it as serious as possible. You don't want to go on there and make a joke of it. Not that you would, but it really made you realize that, you know, don't take it for granted. And, you know, every single game I get to call, I don't look at it as a, oh man, I have to go call another game or, hey, do you want to come out tonight? No, man, I have to go call a game. I wish I didn't have to. It's, hey, no, man, I get to go call a game. It's not, I have to, it's, I get to. And realizing that I was this close to accomplishing something so small in what I was hoping to be a very long journey. And now I realize that, you know, it can be taken from me at any time. And that's something I won't take for granted anymore. And I think there's a lot of people, even just when it comes to everyday work, that won't take it for granted anymore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was speaking of which, I was at that Rocket Mortgage House yesterday covering the Senate championship games because the Senate teams were the teams in the Cleveland metro area. They didn't even get a chance to play football or
Yeah.
basketball in 2020. So a lot of those kids got affected. A lot of the seniors who probably made varsity. I know that there was one young man that I interviewed with Keon Sports had just made the varsity team after a long time, and their season got canceled. So he never got to play, even though they did do some senior showcase games over the summer where all the seniors got to play. It just wasn't really the same, you know.
Oh,
And
I
as
totally
far
get
as
it. I mean, there was players, high school baseball players at Jackson, and just that I knew of growing up competing against at a younger age. You lose your senior season, and some of these kids think, this is the season I'm going to go out there, and maybe a college will find out, about me or hear about me and have interest. And you didn't get that opportunity. And for me, that's tough because you're a kid still, right? And you have this goal to play college baseball, and some were able to still find opportunities, and others it's tough because a lot of people were in the same boat, just at different stages in their life. And it's not like it was just one person affected. So I think a lot of us, you and I included, are able to relate to people that were affected in some way, shape, or form. It was tough, but I do think that it's a level of adversity that you've had to deal with and you grow from it.
Oh yeah, and especially with no games being on throughout until NASCAR came back in May,
Yeah.
like it gets you stir crazy sometimes. You can't go anywhere. You got to stay at home. It's not like, oh, I can just go up to Green or I can go up to Youngstown and shoot video. Can't even
Mhm.
do that. You can't leave your
No.
house. So yeah, you gotta find a way to like talk about sports and stuff like that. Or unless you were a fan of wrestling, I was a fan of wrestling, so at least that tied some people over, and they somehow did have WrestleMania.
Mhm. Yeah, they
Yep,
did.
and yeah, and once the restrictions started to lift, tell me how you got involved with play by play with Jackson and also with the Burning Buckets.
So actually, it was kind of funny how I got started with Jackson. There was a football game for the playoffs actually, and I'm fortunate to live down here in Canton, which is just I'm minutes away, 5 minute drive to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is now where the state championships are held for high school football, which is awesome. I actually knew somebody who had a daughter in band, and they got a number of tickets to go to a game. And you mentioned going stir crazy in the house. My dad and I were chomping at the bit to get out of this house, right? We wanted to go watch sports. So we went to a game, and I actually ended up running into Coach Gamble, whose brother was the head coach of one of the teams playing at Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. And we were talking about everything and, gave him, where I was at with everything. And so he had this idea of, would you be interested in calling baseball games? And like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm never going to say no to an opportunity. And so we had a couple meetings. Obviously, we're talking now spring 2021, so about a year into this, and there was people that either A couldn't come out, B were still weary of coming out because of everything going on, or C, Tony, we play baseball in Northeast Ohio, and you do play games when it's snowing or freezing cold still. So a lot of people don't like to leave their house for that. And he said, well, what if we broadcasted the games live from the field in the press box and put them on YouTube? And we did that, and it actually went so great for the first few weeks. The school ended up coming in, implementing a box cast, which I'm sure you would know. You're familiar with that technology, and they wanted to start putting these on the school box cast. And from there, this was 2021. So I've now done spring 21 for Jackson, 2022. I'm looking forward to doing it again this year for Jackson. But from there, they implemented broadcast for football games. Now, at the time, I was working for another station, so I couldn't do home games. But the girls' basketball coach, who was actually my math teacher all the way back in middle school, said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing our games?" And I said, "Absolutely." It just so happened to turn out they had their most historic season in program history. They went to the state Final Four last year, the first time in school history. And I got to go with them. I did every single home game. I would occasionally go on the road and just cover them via Twitter, because other schools were starting to implement this, and you never want to go to an opposing school and take away their viewership. I firmly believe, especially if they have students doing it, because it's so important to get reps in this business and just learn from everything. So I would just go and cover it on Twitter, live tweet, and then playoff time, because I worked for the school. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to every single playoff game and broadcast. And it ultimately ended in Dayton, Ohio last year at the state Final Four. And now you fast forward to this year, I'm back with the girls. I'm doing all the boys games. And so it's been a treat. We're nearing playoffs again. We've already had the talks about, what days could these teams play should they win in advance. Would I be willing to go? I am. So we've already started to look about, where the games are played, what time, what date. Because I have a partner who helps me when we go on the road for those things. His name's Gianni. He is phenomenal at helping me out produce everything. So that's how I got started with Jackson. And the Buckets, actually, their team owner, actually worked at Notre Dame College when I was at Notre Dame College. And he came to me with this idea in like 2018. And he said, I'm going to buy a basketball team. And he said, you're going to look at me crazy. And I'm pretty sure I looked at him crazy. Like, you're going to buy a basketball team? Like, how are you going to buy a basketball team?
Yeah.
And he told me the plan, how he wanted me to call those games. And crazy enough, when the world got turned upside down, this was a team that was originally supposed to be placed somewhere else. Obviously, the owner lives up in the Willoughby area. And so now they play all their home games in Menor. And so this is my second season as the play-by-play voice of the Buckets for the Bernie River Buckets and their owner, George Phillips. And I have my partner, Ryan Bevere, who was actually play-by-play, and I was his color guy for high school football in the 2021 high school football season. So now roles are reversed for basketball. He's with me. We have a ball. It's so much fun. People, I think, kind of look at it and say, oh, the Bernie River Buckets, what are you? Are you professional? Are you semi-pro? It's professional. These players get paid. This is a business for the owner, George. And it's a blast because there's a couple different rules that you don't see in college basketball or NBA basketball. So that was honestly probably one of the harder parts in trying to learn the game of the ABA. But realistically, just being able to have that relationship with the team owner in college and promising him that if he did this, I would love the opportunity. I was given the opportunity. And I would think I'm doing all right if he's asked me to come back for the past 2 seasons. So that's how I originally got started with the Buckets.
Awesome. It does definitely take a science to do play-by-play. I did play-by-play myself for Tri-C back when they had a media program. It was from 2016 to, I believe, 18. I just called a soccer game solo, a volleyball game solo, and my broadcast partner is Jeff Sabo. Great guy. Worked with him for quite some time, and I mainly just do video for high school sports, but I also did a delayed broadcast for Keon Sports with high school football in 2019. But when you got the camcorder, you just somehow you just make your way down to the field and take video. And I think outside of that, I did I believe I did one basketball game and a football game. I helped out with that with a play-by-play guy, John Bazeka, for one of the Walsh football games in 21. So it's honestly really great experience to do play-by-play, even though I'm really happy being a camcorder, for a video recorder.
And that's what's awesome is because you at least tried it and then you still know what you want to do. For me, this high school football season, I tried doing sideline reporting and I love it. I really do. I'm with Big Time Sports when we're in season for all sports, actually. So trying to balance that between being able to call games for Jackson, also being able to work for Big Time. It's fun and you get to try out new things. And I think that's the biggest thing is you don't want to be restricted to one thing. And for Jackson baseball, for example, I have a partner. His name's Brad Walker, who's actually partnered with John Bazeka, who you just mentioned, for Q92 for high school football season. So small world there. Brad is my color guy for Jackson varsity games. And then they have the varsity gold where I give that opportunity to Brad. He's phenomenal at it. I mean, it's not going to be long before somebody picks him up. And then I go to color, and I hate saying this, and I try to say it in the most humble manner. Color for me, when it comes to baseball, though, for playing baseball for 18 years, it comes relatively easier to me. Just because, especially when it's Jackson, right? I know the coaching style of which they try to coach the kids and what they like to do. I'm familiar with the game, and I know the kids still on a personal level because I do coach during the summertime. So it's fun to be able to say, I can do color too. Or I can do sideline reporting. I can go down with a camcorder like you said you do, and conduct interviews and get video and pictures. It's a blast, and I will never turn down an opportunity to do things like that. And you eventually figure out, I kind of wish I was in the booth right now. So maybe that's where you want to be and where you're supposed to be. Whereas you go, I did, play by play here and there. And, I always found my way down to the field. It seems like where you want to be.
Yep. And I understand you also were part of a podcast called Homegrown. Tell me about how that went. What was that about?
So when it comes to baseball at Jackson, Coach Gamble loves to really promote the program, but also have it in a spot to really invest into the youth, right? Because eventually those kids that play baseball at a young age are going to come through, are going to come through the varsity program more times than not. He wanted a way to be able to connect both the youth of Jackson baseball, including parents, and also the past of Jackson baseball, to kind of talk about what's going on, right? And so there was episodes I interviewed Coach Gamble, who is the head coach at Jackson, Coach Dan Rodriguez, who's the pitching coach and assistant varsity coach, other coaches like Coach Zink, Coach Solinger, there's Coach Yoder, that all have a different background, whether it was as a player, pitching, catching, power hitter, middle infielder, interviewing alumni. We even interviewed at the time Jackson's athletic director, Dan Michael, who is now retired. It was a way for Coach Gamble to promote the program and try to ask questions that would potentially connect the youth to understand why they're doing these things, and also just kind of let you in to know more about these coaches and players, right? I mean, being able to interview someone like Sam Williams, who graduated in 2014 from Jackson, went on and was able to make it into the Major League Baseball field. He was with the Padres organization, Glenn Richardson, or just some other players that just had standout careers. I was able to host that. Coach Gamble presented that idea. And then Gianni, who I mentioned, was able to produce that. And that was a lot of fun because you got to see a lot of behind the scenes things that you typically don't see. You show up to a game to cover it, and you can show up early and maybe get a couple questions before a game from a coach. But on game days, it's business for these guys because at the end of the day, it's their job, right? They want to be able to put the kids out in a position to succeed, win games, have the kids grow and learn from mistakes or their successes and wins. And so that was a really cool opportunity. And I wouldn't say it's done. I would say there's probably always the potential it's going to come back. But Coach Gamble and what he's doing at Jackson, as well as, obviously my schedule in the winter and Gianni doing what he does, it's hard to be able to balance it all. But that's what Homegrown was. It was a Jackson baseball centered podcast and mini docu series, I would almost say.
Gotcha. And you are also a podcaster yourself. So tell me about your podcast.
Yeah. So it's funny. I hopped on my buddy's podcast tonight, probably around 6:30, just talking NBA trade deadline. That was fun. But currently I mentioned Big Time Sports. So I am one of the co-hosts for the Big Time Sports podcast show, myself and my partner, Mitch Balla. And so what we do is we cover all the high school sports. Mitch Spinell is actually in Tuscarawas County. So he takes care of all those sports down there. I take care of Stark County, any news, big games, highlights, players. We try to recap everything going on at once during the respective sporting seasons. And then also cover the teams in the area, right? Cover Ohio State, cover Mount Union when they made the national championship game, the Browns, the Buckeyes, the Guardians, the Cavs, be able to get the people around here that tune in just a different voice and a different take and a different opinion on sports going around here. Mitch and I have been doing that, I believe, since August. Love it. Actually, yesterday we kind of went off the trail of sports and got into a debate about Girl Scout cookies. And that's the best thing about having a podcast, as you know, is you can talk about whatever you want. Obviously within a certain realm of keeping it appropriate and obviously relevant to the topic at hand. But we're nearing Girl Scout cookie season. And so we got into a debate about which Girl Scout cookies we like the most. So that's what I'm currently doing. I had a former podcast with my cousin called Cover Your Balls. It was a sporting podcast where we covered all the sporting balls in the world. And so that's where we got started. We made it to about 70 episodes before his schedule got hectic and mine. But podcasting is so much fun. And I honestly think that it's a great spot for people to start if they're interested in getting into this field, because no matter what you do, no matter how many episodes you do, all it takes is one episode and the right listener to listen to you to start tuning in or to reach out for other opportunities. Or in some instances, maybe you put your podcast on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. All you need is one clip to blow up, and next thing you know, you're trending on the internet with the world we're in today.
Gotcha. And this is my eighth episode of Tapped In with Tony. So I've been doing this for about, I'd say, just slightly under a month. So I'm learning about that along the way.
That's the big thing. You learn as you learn as you go. And I would say that the biggest thing in that is you started, right? And that's what it is for life, is you just have to start somewhere, and you'll see it. You'll start to get it. You already have, because you're doing a great job. I loved when you reached out asking if I'd be able to come on here. It was a yes. And so, yeah, it's been great to follow along and see where you started. And I'm very, very, very fortunate that you asked me to come on tonight.
Thanks. And thank you for coming on too and being a guest. I really appreciate that. I just have some 3 fun questions to ask you before we wrap up for the evening. Okay. First question, you did say something about Girl Scout cookies. Start one, bench one, cut one. Any 3 flavors.
Wow, that's tough. That's tough. All right. Start one, bench one, cut one. We're going to start tag-alongs. The peanut butter patty cookies covered in chocolate. We're going to start those. We're going to bench Thin Mints, just because I think Thin Mints are a classic. And, if you ever need a switch up, a nice mint cookie is a very good switch up. And then we're going to cut the lemon cookies they do, because I'm just not a lemon guy. So those are actually my least favorite cookies. So we're going to cut them so I never have the option to run into them again.
Gotcha. Best Super Bowl food, pizza or chicken wings?
All right. Are the wings bone in or boneless?
Bone in. I know how people feel about boneless, so I'm going to add bone in.
Pizza. The only reason I asked if they're boneless or bone in is if I'm at a house party, especially somebody else's house, bone in wings get a little messy, and I don't like to ever ruin somebody's thing. So at least with pizza, might be a little greasy, whatever, but you can also, I don't know. I can speak for myself. I can eat a lot of pizza if I want to. And so to me, I would go pizza for the Super Bowl.
Got it. What's your favorite pizza?
I love barbecue chicken pizza, buffalo chicken pizza. Actually, that's probably buffalo chicken pizza from a little place up in Cleveland called Map Room in downtown Cleveland. To this day, is probably the best pizza I've ever had.
Okay. And I know my mom took me to Angelo's one time. Their pizza is actually really good. And I'd like to try Nashville hot chicken pizza. I've heard that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Angelo's is phenomenal. It's probably my favorite local Canton-based pizza.
And final question. It is Super Bowl Sunday in the next 3 days. So Eagles or Chiefs?
I'm rooting for the Eagles. I really am. However, I feel like experience does weigh in on this game, and you have a Super Bowl winning coach that's been there twice now. He's 1-2 or 1-1, excuse me. Patrick Mahomes has a Super Bowl. Travis Kelce has a Super Bowl. And I don't know if there's a better duo, at least in this matchup, than Mahomes and Kelce. My gut tells me the Chiefs are probably going to win this. I'm rooting for the Eagles, though, just because I don't want to see another AFC team win it. The Browns are going to have to compete against here for the next number of years. I just hope it's a good game. Really. I really just hope it's a very good instant classic game. Maybe something similar to that Patriots Giants Super Bowl with David Tyree catching the ball in his helmet. Just something fun. But I'm rooting Eagles. My gut tells me the Chiefs are going to win this.
Awesome. And I'm a Saints fan, so I'm rooting for the Chiefs. Even though we beat the Eagles, I'd like to see the Eagles get beat one more time.
Yeah, you're just like me. You don't want to root for the same team out of your conference.
And before we wrap up, if you've got any final message to share, feel free. The floor is yours.
Honestly, I would just say my final message is I kind of touched on it throughout here. And, I've had, I like to document my things, right? I like to put things on a website. I like to take my work or even photos and upload them somewhere, and not for anybody else's personal gain, but just for me to remember how far I've come. It's crazy because before we hopped on here, I was sitting here thinking, I want to go back and look at how many games I've done. Um, and I texted two of my best friends that know how passionate I am about this. And I said, over under, right? Because now we're in Ohio where sports betting is legal. I said, over under, 86 and a half games I've called since I started back in college. And they once said over, but not by a lot. And come to find out, I'm at Tuesday night when I called Jackson versus Medina. It'll be my 113th broadcast, which I'm very lucky. But the only reason I say that is because I mentioned in sixth grade, I knew what I wanted to do. If you know what you're passionate about, attack it. Just attack it. That's all it is. Like, don't be discouraged, because I think when I started out, I had such high expectations for myself and a high standard that when I had a bad game, I would get down on myself, almost like a player, right? Players have bad games, but you can't do that because there's always going to be the next one. And if I'm telling you I have 113 games with this next one coming up on Tuesday, I bet you it wasn't game 8 before I was like, man, I don't think I'm good at this, or that was a bad broadcast. You flip that switch in your head and you just say, control what you can control and attack what you love, and you're going to have a blast. And I'm having a blast doing it. I'm having a blast calling games, covering games, hosting a podcast, and hopping on a podcast like this with you tonight. It's a joy. It's so much fun. And the big thing is, it never feels like work. Obviously, there's work that you have to do behind the scenes, and I do, but at the same time, that is so small for what an actual job entails that this never feels like work. And that's why I love it.
Awesome. And they say if you really love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's true.
Thank you for coming on the show, Mitch. Really appreciate
Tony,
it.
thank you so much.